Hey, these people, welcome back to the channel. We're doing another Q&A episode here where I go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the social medias and look for fish keeping questions and then bring them back to y'all here, answer them in the hopes that if you have a similar question, it helps you with the answer. But first, if you're not subscribed yet, please consider hitting that sub button, especially if you find yourself come back with a regular and you enjoy the content we put out on the channel. So let's dive into these questions. So first question here is one that has a simple answer and then a slightly more technical answer. It is, how do you adjust temperature in fish tanks? First of all, I'm going to say anytime you're adjusting the temperature up or down, do this slowly, as slowly and conservatively as you can. You don't want to be starting at 68 degrees and just throw your heater at 82 and let it heat up like that. First of all, your heater is going to get extremely hot, and if a fish happens to touch that, they're going to get burned. Second of all, that heat's going to stay compartmentalized to one spot of the tank depending on your circulation. So unless your heater is right next to your hang-on back or sponge filter or an output for another type of filter, it's just going to sit there and it's going to slowly spread throughout your tank. So if you're trying to get your tank to say 80 and your temperature out of your tap is, let's say, 72, turn your heater to 76, let it get to 76, wait about an hour, turn it to 78, turn it to 80. That way it's a slow progression upwards versus a steep climb. That's how I change temps in my tanks. I'm using heaters in most all of my tanks. If I need to go up, I'm turning that heater up. If I need to go down, I'll slowly dial that temperature back. Now, typically the only time I'm increasing my temperature is if I have sick fish and I need to increase the temp to help get rid of something like ick. Otherwise, my temperature stays constant in my tanks. Now, as far as lowering the temperature in your fish tank, this can be done by, if you have a lid, remove that lid, angle a fan at your water. The air hitting the top of your tank is going to help cool your water down. Again, do this slow, put the fan on the lowest setting, maybe take half your lid off, and it's going to slowly cool your water down. So cooling your water down, you can put a fan on the top, heating your water up. You can always do slowly incremental increases on your heater. I've also wrapped my fish tanks in blankets before if we were going to have extremely cold nights and the electricity was out, and that helped stabilize the temperature, not so much change it. That's a great question because some people might not know how to reduce the temps in their tank. So I hope this might help y'all if you've had this question before. All right, here's another great one, especially for all of us that have multi-tank syndrome. How do y'all keep your hospital and or quarantine tank cycled so that they are ready when you need them? As long as you've got some type of food in that tank and you have a cycled filter, that can be as simple as throwing in a little bit of fish food once a week, just so that bacteria that's already in there has something to live off of. I know a lot of people will leave a guppy or a molly or some fish in their tanks to keep them cycled. Do the same thing with snails. Keep something in the tank that'll produce some waste. You don't have to feed it a lot, and that'll keep a slight cycle going in the tank where it's not going to crash. If you're running a sponge filter or hang on back in your hospital tank, simplest thing, if you don't want to put livestock in there and just keep it fresh, put a little bit of fish food in there to keep that cycle going. You don't have to put a lot in, one flake, a couple pellets, and it'll keep enough of a cycle in there. I do this with empty tanks. If I lose a fish, I still keep feeding it like I normally would to keep cycle in there. So when I go put a new fish in there, I'm not starting completely from scratch. Biggest problem most of us are going to have is with that hospital tank and quarantine tank being empty, not putting another fish in there. So this one is a stocking question. It says, I was wondering if this would be too much for a 20-gallon tank. 2 dwarf gouramis, 5 ember tetras, 5 harlequin rasboras, 5 glow light rasboras, 2 to 3 albino cories, 2 to 3 panda cories, and then 5 cherry shrimp. Okay, the ember tetras gonna stay nice and tiny. Glow light tetras gonna stay nice and small. Harlequins are also gonna stay small. I think 15 altogether there will be fine. Those dwarf gouramis, you could probably do good with 2 of those in there as well. When it comes to the cories, 2 to 3 really isn't enough. You're going to want at least a group of 5 of those. So I would say either pick albinos or pick pandas. Now, pandas stay slightly smaller than albinos, which means their waist is going to be slightly less than the albinos. I would err on the sign of caution since you're right what I would consider a moderately stocked tank, not overstocked, not understocked. But if you've got your 15 schooling fish, your 2 dwarf gouramis, your 5 hand aquaries, it's probably going to put it at that just perfect number. I would hold off on the shrimp. Honestly, if it was me, keep the other stuff in there. If you want to do shrimp, put them in their own tank. Granted, their bioload's going to be small, but in a 20 gallon with 22 fish in there, you can sometimes get some wacky parameters going on with some spikes. Shrimp aren't going to like that too much. So I would say omit the shrimp, omit the albino cories, go with the pandas instead. And that's going to be a decent 20 gallon tank. Honestly, I might even pull out those gouramis too. 5 ember tetras, 5 harlequin rasboras, 5 glow light rasboras, and then you're throwing in your 5 panda cories. To me, that's a perfect 20 gallon right there. You don't need the gouramis or the shrimp in there. Could you do it with what your original list was? Yes. Personally, I would change it up just a little bit, especially in a 20 gallon tank. That's just my personal opinion. Love good stocking questions though, because I don't see them often enough. You know, it wouldn't be a video on my channel without me trying to get a beta question in here. So this one says, is female beta care the same as males if she's solo? I've seen this adorable one nearby and debating if I should bring her home in a smaller tank or just throw her in my 29. So yes, female beta care is going to be the same as male beta care if they are solo. The only real difference between male and female betas is the females aren't as aggressive or have slightly less aggressive tendencies than most of your males. They also don't get the nice big fins. They're going to stay more streamlined, but they're gorgeous in their own right. Smaller tank. This person is saying they mean a 5 gallon. You could easily keep female beta in a 5 gallon. Typical parameters, 78, 80 degrees, nice neutral to a slightly acidic pH. She'll do great in a 5 gallon for you. If you want to throw in your 29, that's fine too. Just make sure you're not going to have anything that might go at her that's not too aggressive, is going to stress her out too much, or too active and stress her out too much. Other than that, care is virtually the same for females as it is for males. And if you're looking for any female betas, of course, you can always go to keepfishkeeping.com. My friends John and Lisa from KT Tropicals over there sell beautiful females. You can always check them out if you're in the market for a female beta. All right, this one comes with a picture. It says, getting cloudy. I'm assuming the nitrate cycle reset. Any tips? So when your tank gets cloudy, this looks like a murky cloudy, which means the water almost looks like someone put a little bit of milk in there. So it's blurry, distorted vision for you. Typically, when I've had this happen in my tanks, it's from adding new fish and increasing that bio load. It's not that the cycle is crashing, it's that that cycle just has to catch up to the new fish. So think of it as you've already got 2 dogs at home. You add 2 more dogs, your hair's going to go up, the amount of food they eat's going to go up, and it's going to take you a little while to adjust to having more dog hair and more dog food being needed. That's what's happening here most likely from this picture. Your fish aren't acting funky, they're not going transparent and gasping for air. Most likely it's just you've added something or changed something. You added too much food that has now broken down and increased the amount of ammonia in your tank, which of course will require more nitrates to come in there and suck it all up. Or you added new fish and caused an increase in the bio load, which just requires a jump start to your tank. You can let this happen naturally. It'll take a couple weeks, but your tank will clear up on its own. Or you can add something like an API quick start or Fritz 7-zyme or any of those bacteria in a bottle products. Those will help give your cycle just a little boost to help get it caught back up. But again, natural process will take over and it'll get there in a couple weeks, if not sooner. All depends on how much you've added or what that increase in one of the sources was. But it is, again, not uncommon for that to happen in your tanks. Again, judging by this picture, it definitely does look more like a bacterial bloom from an increase in the bio load. If your water was green, I would say it's free-floating algae, and that would be a completely different problem. But again, looking by just this picture and not knowing what else happened, something increased the bio load, and that's why your water went murky. Again, it will clear up on its own, though. Perfect follow-up to this last one here. We've got someone here saying, why are my fish dropping dead in my community tank, not showing signs of illness? This can be for a number of reasons. there could be a bacterial infection going on in your tank, and it's internal. If you have an internal bacterial infection, normally the first thing you're going to notice is some type of reddening or discoloration in your fish's color. Check their abdomens. Normally, this is where you're gonna see this happen. If they're slowly dropping dead one by one, I would say check your ammonia, first of all. Check your water. Make sure nothing crazy happened. Your pH isn't fully out of whack, or you don't have an ammonia or a nitrite spike. That's where I would start. I would also check your heater. Make sure your heater didn't malfunction and is showing it set at 76 or 78 or whatever temperature you have it set at, but it has since malfunctioned and your water is up way higher than it should be, or extremely lower than it should be. You also might have a heater malfunctioning that is actually shocking your fish. Only way to really test that is if you stick your finger in the tank and you feel kind of like a jolting or a pulsing on your finger, your heater has most likely short-circuited. You might notice some browning or some condensation on the inside of it. Unplug that heater, throw it out, get a new one. It is possible something has died in your tank that you don't see. If you keep snails or other small things in there that you can't always see, if something has died, they're going to be releasing a lot of ammonia, which is why you're going to want to test for ammonia to see if there's a spike in that. Fish not showing signs of illness, sometimes they don't. You're not going to see anything, or it's just so minute that you might not notice it. I would say if you've got those fish dying, pull one, put it on a paper plate or something, and just kind of look, see if there's any weird discolorations in the fish, if there's any weird anything going on with the body. If you do notice something, treat with an antibiotic, or if you notice any worms or anything, treat with a parasite medicine. So you really got to look at a couple of factors. If they're new fish and they dropped dead slowly one by one over, say, the course of 5 or 6 days, most likely they were weak when you got them, or they were stressed out when you got them. This is why you typically want to quarantine fish when you first get them. Not that we all do that, but that's one of the reasons to quarantine, just in case anything's funky with the fish. Even if you leave them in another tank for a week just to observe them, it'll also be less stressful on them than being thrown in a community tank. Check that heater, test your water. That's really the best we can do with our fish to see what's going on, is to start with testing your water and checking to make sure your heater didn't malfunction. So I hope that helps answer that question. It's again hard to diagnose certain things without more information from the keeper themselves. So I hope this helps answer any questions you might have had if you've had similar issues happen to you. Again, I want to thank you all for the continued support on the videos. I do really appreciate it. If you're interested in more Q&As like this, I will link one in the end screen for you. And of course, YouTube can do its thing and pick what it thinks it's best for you. Remember to leave a comment down below with any questions you have you want me to answer on future videos. Hit that like button if you did enjoy this, and I'll catch you guys later.